Dennis Rodman going to North Korea. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I've
All right, we're live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michaels. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. If this is the first time that you're connecting with Paragliding Talk, glad you're here. This is a great place to come on Thursday nights to talk about paragliding. If you're addicted like many people are, it happens. You're addicted to paragliding, flying in general. This is the place to come on Thursday nights to tickle your fancy. So I'm glad you're here. You're joined in moderation by Sean Nafsker, Anthony Peregringo, Scott. We're all here to help you to be a better pilot, to be incredible at flying, and whatever tips that we have, we don't hold back. We're going to try to help you to do whatever it takes to make you good at what you're doing. We got all kinds of resources. We got all kinds of friends and people that are we've surrounded ourselves with that know the answers, know where to buy the gear, know decisions, uh, have learned the hard way. Some of us, like me, I learned the hard way on a lot of things and paid some prices. But nevertheless, glad that you're here. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I want to mention a couple sponsors. One of those sponsors is actually Harley Milne. He runs a school here in Southern California, and their website is dreamlifterparamotors.com, dreamlifterparamotors.com. And if you're interested in getting some training, that is a place that you can do that. Can I help you, ma'am?
Just
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure you didn't have a pressing question. My wife's hovering over me. I thought I was in trouble or something. So Harley Milne has this great school, and he will teach you how to send it or bend it. He will get you into the cross country type, even world record type flying, because he's done a whole bunch of that. Sign up with his training, and you're going to get some excellent feedback. And he's just a good all around guy. He's been on the show multiple times. Go check out his website or go check out some of the previous episodes where Harley Milne was on the show. Let's talk about PPG Smoke real quick. PPGsmoke.com is the website. Ryan Roberts, he's made all kinds of cool stuff for our flying stuff. Check out his website. Also want to mention paramotorprops.com. Go to their website in case you blow up a prop. No better place to get new props that I know of. Paramotorprops.com. There's links in the description. Thank you also for putting those in the chat. So welcome. Glad that you're here. Super stoked about tonight's show. This is a show. Right when we logged on, the guys were asking, they were like, what's the topic tonight? And my answer was, this is a topic that I said I would never do. But 200 and some episodes, you decide to make some adjustments, and I think that we're all mature enough to make our own decisions, right?
hmm.
I think we're all mature enough to
Hmm.
make our own decisions. We're mature enough to uh, think things through. And so I came to the conclusion I want to do this show. We're going to talk about self-teaching. And every time that you hear about self-teaching, it's always in a negative connotation. Every person that I've ever talked to, it's like, oh, it's almost like a cuss word in paragliding. Yeah, I self-taught. And they look at you like, oh my gosh, oh, I can't be around you. I can't touch your hand. I shook your hand, didn't I?
He,
Oh,
he just said
and
the S word.
yeah, you said the S word. And self-teaching is there is a lot of negative attachments to that. However, I want to bring the balance because look, not everyone can afford to drop four, five, six, $10,000 to get their feet off the ground. Not everyone has the time to take a full 2 weeks off of work to go and be training. Not everyone has the opportunities that look. So here's my situation. I'm going to make some excuses for why I self-taught. I'm going to talk about my progression and what direction I ended up going in the end. So we're going to talk about that. Some of you are thinking right now, you're like, oh man, what kind of a can of worms is he opening up? I want to start the show off by saying I don't recommend that you self-teach. Not a good idea. It's almost like, why would you try to invent your learning when you could fast track your learning by getting basically the answers ahead of time? Um, there's just something about being able to kind of it's like I would argue getting training is like the cheat code for the video game, right? So if you can afford it and you have the resources or the connections to get the code, the cheat code, getting the lessons from an instructor that and preferably somebody that's certified. We were talking before the show, and I don't want to talk about any names or throw anybody under the bus, but some instructors just are not meant to be instructors, and they filled out the right paperwork, they took the right tests, they went to the concert, they bought the shirt, and they are that instructor. Doesn't necessarily mean they're good at teaching, doesn't mean that they're necessarily wise and choosing the gear or fill in the blanks. So there are going to be scenarios where you're going to have these really strong opinions about self-teaching, and they're going to say, look, I think that I know that I made the right decision on self-teaching. But so the preference, the let me preface this show by saying I recommend that you get training by a certified uh what's the term? Somebody who is respected in the industry. And we'll help you. We'll point you in the right direction if you're trying to get this. And so you're probably going to see this video or you're going to hear this podcast after the fact, so it's not live. We'll put some links to some of the guys, and always feel free to reach out to us through the contact form on paraglidingtalk.com on the website, and we'll try to help you. So let me just talk you through my beginning days. So I found a Tucker Got video that I was passionate about when I first saw the video. The very first one was it was a picture of Tucker and he was at I think it was 15,000 feet. It said flew my paramotor to 15,000 feet. And I was like, first of all, I was like, what's paramotor? Second of all, I was like, why is this dude like hanging out the airplane? I couldn't figure out what was happening. And so my curiosity got me, and then I went to his video. The first video is him setting up some stuff. Sets his gear up. He's in a park, and he runs into the sky. Now, for me, seeing this guy run into the sky was incredible. I was so stoked, and just blew me away what was happening. He's flying like a foot off the ground, and then all of a sudden he'd hit the gas and he'd fly over a tree or a fence or some power lines, and he'd go back into the field. And all the time he's like talking and sharing stories and talking about the gear and what he was planning on doing in adventures and his goals in life. And at that time he lived with his parents. He's talking about all these cool things. And I thought to myself, this is amazing. I don't know how I'm going to get involved in this, but I have to somehow. So maybe you're like me. You go and you look in your wallet, you open it up, and it's just dust and cobwebs, and you dump it out, and you have nothing in there. Not enough to buy a paramotor nor a wing. But I slowly but surely began to investigate. Okay, so how much is a wing? And I'm looking at people's websites and I'm asking questions of people that have YouTube channels that are associated with paragliding or paramotoring. And I'm messaging the guys that are lower in the follower count so that they'll actually respond. And you find some very interesting people that are willing to respond and excited to talk about paragliding. And so I found out the idea of what the price is to buy some gear. By the way, I just want to say thanks to John Wayne. He donated $10 to the super chat long before we even started the show. John, thank you so much. I really appreciate you contributing and tipping the show. I appreciate that. So we have this back and forth with one or two people that have a YouTube channel. And my questions were leaning more towards like, how much does this stuff cost? What should I be worried about? And in my adventure of looking up paragliding stuff, I find out that a coworker actually flies free flight paragliders locally here at Torrey Pines Glider Port. And I'm like, no way, that's insane. Well, I find the guy's phone number. I start a conversation with him. I was the chief engineer of a building. He previously was the chief engineer of my building. And so that's why I was able to I had that foot in to talk to him. And I began to inquire the questions that every brand new pilot would ask. The questions about basically, can you tell me someone that will sell me used gear at a reasonable price? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's okay that I'm gonna self-teach? And you know, I've got a whole world of people that came after me when I first posted my video. I'm going to do a quick screen share. I posted a video of ground handling, and this was the very first. This was the very first. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Let me just.
That's a
So
while.
yeah, this was the very beginning. So I go to this park. I break my gear out. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to optimize my screen share. I don't know why it makes you do that.
And this
Why
is
not?
where the
Or like,
calamity
let me go ahead and
begins.
share a low quality video.
Optimize
Let's
it.
do that. Let's not optimize. Let's make it crappy. Like, why is that a checkbox? Here, sorry about that, guys. We go here. There we go. So, I mean, you can see like even as I was building this video, look what I posted on there. It's like, this is called kiting. And so, anyways, I'm out in the park. There's very light wind, and I have this glider.
Is that your,
And
I'm sorry, is that your very first wing and harness?
this is it. Yep.
And
This
what
is the
wing is it?
very first one. That's called the Ozone Vibe.
All right.
And Ozone Vibe it actually is a decent wing. I have to admit, it had a lot of built-in passive safety, even though it was from 2004. So when I got it, I think it was already 10 plus years old, which is, you look at wing deterioration and stuff like that. If that wing was not stored in a very good place, that wing would be dangerous. But here's what I did, and I'll fast forward this part because it's kind of boring. But I buy the gear from eBay. I find this couple who is selling it. They ask me who my instructor is. And at this point, I didn't really understand what that meant. Okay. I'm going to play dumb here. But at that point, I assumed that my instructor was anyone I was talking to about paragliding. Okay. So I was at that point, I had been in communications with Phil Russman, who had just told me, don't buy any gear. I'm going to Hawaii. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Okay. But my passion was way too hot for 2 weeks. There was no
You can
waiting two
never
weeks.
wait that long. You
No,
can't wait
no.
that long.
And
Once your
he
mind
warned
is
me,
set, forget it.
Yeah.
not happening. So I'm on eBay, you know, all kinds of searching happening. Find this used gear for a price that's in my budget. I call the lady up. I'm like, look, it's a woman. She lives up in close to Santa Barbara. I think she trained at Eagle possibly. And she ends up telling me, look, we're moving to Connecticut. I gotta sell this stuff. And she goes, they don't really need money. When I got to their house, incredible house, beautiful. You could tell they got money. This wasn't about a transfer of this wing because they needed money. It was literally about principle, and they probably loved their wing like I love my wing, and I was careful about who was going to buy my wing. I get to her house, so she asked me the right questions, but I didn't really understand what I was saying when I said my instructor is Phil Russman. He wasn't my instructor. I had never given him any money. As a matter of fact, I've never given Phil Russman any money at all, ever. And he had, by the time I became a quote unquote student of his, he had already stopped instructing professionally.
So he's well known already by that point in the industry and the people
Yeah.
you're buying your wing from. probably already go, oh, all right, you're with Bill, you know.
Yeah, exactly what happened. And so I tell him I'm from San Diego. Um, I didn't talk very much about my plans other than I would like to buy the wing. It was in my size range. So I go to their house, and it turns out that actually they have two wings and two harnesses. And the husband's like, this is taking up space in my garage. Just give it to him. So I give her the money for the first wing. She gives me it's an APCO, or no, I'm sorry, it's a Silex. Silex makes this wing, in the front of the wing, and I still have it. The front of the wing, it looks like a piano. You seen that wing? We're talking old school, but it's a very spicy wing, and its profile is very spicy, but it's kind of overbuilt. But it's a great kiting wing for the kids when we go to Salton Sea. Anyways, uh, so I get two wings and two harnesses for like I think it was $800, and that was a stretch for me. I think that involved like tax refund money or something like that. That was the only way I was going to get that. And so I drive home. I get this gear. Now, keep in mind, I've got the gear. I have no idea what's happening. And the first thing I do is go, "What's this red handle for?" And I pull the handle. It's a
It's like, what's
reserve,
this
I'm
red
like,
button do? You know?
yeah, what?
All
And I'm
right.
like,
Same with
oh
the reserve.
gosh. I realized what it was when I pulled it, but I didn't pull it completely out of the bag. So I was able to push it back and put the pins back. I'm like, that's a reserve. Okay. I'm tracking. And the second thing that I did right away was sell the second harness with a reserve in it so that I could recoup some of my money that I just spent, which was, that's a lot of money for me at that time. And so, anyways, fast forward, I'm gonna take the glider and I'm gonna kite in the park. Now, I didn't come up with this idea of kiting in the park by myself. Um, I talked to some pilots. So before you think you're inventing stuff, um, be careful. Uh, I was asking a lot of questions of other pilots. So I would argue that the self-teaching badge, that's a loose statement because no one really self-teaches. You're going to learn from someone. You didn't sew that paraglider. You didn't invent paragliding. So self-teaching that's a loose statement. But I took that kite, I went to the park, and by advice of this friend of mine, I began to write down my progress in a book. Let me just, I'm going to do another screen share. Let me see if I can pull this up here. We're also, by the way, tonight, we're going to talk about the pre-qualifications for P3 certification, because that's going to be your next questions. You're going to be like, well, how did you get your P rating and how did you be able to fly at Torrey Pines? Because that's ultimately what everybody wants to do. It's like, I want to fly at Torrey Pines and I want to see that wonderful view. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up. Let's see if I can't figure out how to use Zoom. Okay, here we go. And so I found this conversation because I was looking up the old school P2 qualifications. Um, this is a conversation I had with Simon Herga. Now, Simon lives in Canada, and some of you may know about his channel, but it is an incredible channel. And I think he started off rock climbing. There's this mountain called Mountain Baldy, and he was rock climbing, saw somebody paragliding, I believe. I could be off on this story, but saw somebody paragliding, said, "Oh my gosh, I have to do that. I can't believe this." And he, being an adventurous person, got involved. Well, he found my channel and he messaged me and he said, "Hey, I too can't afford to uh, spend the money on training and all this stuff." And he goes, "I'm actually doing the self-teaching route, blah, blah, blah. I appreciate you sharing your videos and your story." Well, long story short, we ended up connecting. I shared with him exactly what I thought was the best way to go about getting into the air. And I told him that I was going to log 30 hours of ground handling before I would take my first flight. And so this was his book that he sent to me. And I thought it was really cool. If you look closely, let me see if I can zoom. There we go. Um, if you look really closely, he put some turbulence from surrounding trees, not a good GH zone, so ground handling zone. Uh, Airfield is good for 360 winds, but it's flat. West facing grassy slopes, potential soaring zone. And so it's just cool. He was like recording every place where he was at, the date, how many hours, if he launched, how long the flight was in air. And this is pretty much what I had wrote down. And so the wing that I used, this is his thing, but he used, I guess, my idea or however. He actually put the harness on there too. That's pretty cool. But anyways, why was this important? Well, when you are in that first phase of learning, or when you're in that the excitement phase, Yankee Paramotor donated $5 to the super chat. He said Russian retirement fund.
You gotta keep reading it though. You gotta read it though. That's funny.
Oh,
Read the rest of the chat. So he's
laugh out loud. Russian. It's all calamity until you learn to control the chaos. Russ, man.
Russman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He corrected it.
Uh,
That's cool.
yep, Captain Chaos. So,
Something to point out here as far as like the self-teaching aspect that a lot of people don't consider or think of is learning bad habits and repeating those bad habits and not even realizing that you're doing something that you shouldn't do with your wing. There's nothing like finding that out too late and in realizing either you damaged yourself or your gear.
yeah,
That's something that's really important to point out is learning bad technique.
Yeah,
sure.
well, that's why they say perfect practice makes perfect.
That's right. That's right.
So, once I logged about 25 hours in the book, going to the park and going to, well, I'll tell you this. I got scared away from the park because of a kid that was at the skate park, probably 12, 13, 14 years old. And he's yelling across the park, "You can't do that here. You have to get a permit." And I'm like, permit? What in the world is he talking about? I don't think he knew what he was talking about, but he's probably California born communist. And so he literally sang out
I'm
loud
California born, dude.
California rules. He noticed that somebody was potentially going to have fun. And he was like, that cannot be happening. That is prohibited here in the state of California without a permit. And anyways, the kid is yelling, "You got to get a permit!" And I, what was a hair's breadth away from green lighting one of my bad kids to go and beat him up, but we didn't do that. And we ended up just ground handling there. So, anyways, I got to the place where I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm going to get away from this park. I'm not going to go there anymore. I'd gone there a handful of times, logged a bunch of hours there. I'll tell you this, the best thing that ever happened to me, again, I told you this show was going to be controversial, and I'm warning you now, this is a very dangerous thing I'm about to tell you. The best thing that happened to my ground handling was when I showed up to the park and it was blowing like 15 miles an hour plus. Told you it's controversial. It was
That
the
was the best
best.
thing.
That was the best thing that helped my ground handling. I'll tell you why. Because it made me respect the wind. And
Because it
Gosh,
can hurt you.
I
It's like a
became,
gorilla, man. That gorilla doesn't care about you, me, or
man,
anybody. It will
yep.
treat you the same.
that happened to me when I first started out ground handling. I had this tandem wing, and it was pulling me like close to the road and everything. And I'm like going for my life, trying to make it not pull me, towards the road where there's cars and stuff. And I'm just picturing a car bumper catching it and me getting dragged all through. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, wow. But that's awesome.
So,
You like that?
so it's not that I liked it, but it made me learn very quickly how to kill my wing, because who cares if you know how to bring the wing up over your head and run into the wind and fly off if you can't stop the wing from taking you somewhere you don't want to go?
No,
Doesn't
and
make a lick of difference.
now, not only that, but with the wind conditions, one, the size of the wing makes a difference, and two, it makes a difference on whether you're in a beachfront air, if you're on flat land, or if you're also in mountainous terrain. Um, these are things that you normally don't learn self-teaching and understanding,
Yep.
rotor, the area,
Right.
the weather, things
Yeah.
like this. These are things that, I'm at least trying to point out some of the things that you might not be thinking of immediately right off the bat, just because you don't know, you don't know what you don't know.
And it's
And
hard to
that's
know
where
because
that
you
saying
can't
comes
see the
from.
air. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's why like rip currents are so deadly because you don't see them, kind of thing. So that's
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'll just give you a quick description about the day, and then we'll spin the wheel. We had this, I would argue, was probably between 8 and 12 when we showed up to the park. And I was actually really excited about that because most of the time I would get after work, I would get to the park when it was basically lulling out and becoming nothing, forcing you to run in order to make that flight, or to make any kind of, and keep in mind, I'm trying to fly in a park that is flat. I'm running and I'm going in the air for just a second and then I'm landing, and I'm loving that. I'm like, I was so excited about that. Well, when the wind was strong enough, now I'm actually able to jump pretty high into the air. Like, I'm talking 6 to 10 feet on a flat ground, just running and then pulling the brakes a little bit and going up and then landing. And I was doing this over and over and over again. And the wind kept on kind of getting stronger and stronger. I'm not very good at this point of ground handling. By the way, it was strong enough that I wasn't even able to record because I didn't have enough like goal to disconnect from my glider and set up the GoPro, and it I never got to film this because it was so intense. At one point, I got dragged all the way across the park into people that are sitting there on like towels and stuff, just enjoying the sun. And so it's a full-on show for them. They're probably thinking to themselves, like, this dude's gonna kill somebody. And it was very possible that I could have. Note, wear a helmet when you're ground handling, no matter what. I don't care what excuse you got. I was getting whipped around and slammed on the ground, and I hit my head a couple times that day. Very grateful that I had the helmet on. Okay. Green stripes on the bottom of my gear, and all kinds of different lessons were learned in that moment. So I would argue, be very careful in your choice at wind speed. I had an actual a little, is it called a manometer? Yeah, manometer. I was measuring this wind speed, and I think at its peak it was like 22. It was insane.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's another thing to point out too, is a lot of times people are scared to take gliders out in high winds, which you should be scared to take your glider out in high winds because it can be detrimental and very scary.
Oh, it will kick your
Once
butt.
once you're up in the air and you're going backwards and there ain't no stopping, and you're
Yep.
pretty much at the mercy of the wind and the grill that's tugging you and dragging you,
Yep.
you really want to pick your times and your days well where it's going to be comfortable for you because the last thing you want to be is uncomfortable in the air and out of control.
Yep. Getting your
That's three
butt handed
things
to
that
you.
are disastrous, that can be disastrous.
Yep. Okay, let's spin the wheel and
Yeah.
let's give some stuff away.
No more names in the wheel. Cutting it off right now.
Count it
That's
off.
right. That's right. Cutting it off.
So let me just mention real quick that the spin of this wheel is brought to you by Calamity Kite Clinic. CalamityKiteClinic.com is the website. That's Sean's organization. He'll be at fly-ins here and there. We'll let him chime in what fly-ins he's going to be at. But if you want to sign up for his training, he has the website. You can go. There is a nominal fee. You sign up. You get some one-on-one training with Sean, and
If you
he
want to go
is
that route.
well respected. Yeah, yeah.
Or if
A
you want to
show
go
about
self-taught,
self-teaching.
you can
Yeah.
do that too. So this
Yeah,
is
you
the
can learn
worst
the
one to
hard
do.
way.
Sorry.
Put that money towards beer or something. I don't know.
Sean's the cheat
Sean's gonna
code.
kill us.
If you are
He's
going to
like,
ground handle by yourself in strong winds, make sure that you're filming yourself so that we can all point and laugh.
Or that you have Sean watching and paying attention, so you can say, "Don't do that. Do this. Give this a
Yeah.
shot."
Yeah, the cheat code. So
That's right.
also want to mention Nebraska PPG. Did I not unlock the no, you got ability to screen share. Go
Oh,
ahead and spin that wheel, Sean.
oh, Yankee paramotor.
Oh, we didn't get to see it.
What do you mean you didn't get to see it?
You didn't screen share it.
If you
I
don't have
did click
if you
screenshot.
don't have video, it never happens.
Oh,
If you don't have video, it
oh
never
man.
happens.
Yeah.
Looks like you're gonna have to spin it
If you
again.
don't
This
have
is
I'm
Yankee
just
video, it
kidding,
never
paramotor
happens.
though.
Yankee. I'm just kidding.
We
Yankee.
got to give it to Yankee. I mean, it did land on
Yeah.
his name. And look, I'll even close this out so you can see how close it was because it was really freaking close. People would probably think that Scott was about to win it. And, ain't nobody wants Scott to win this stuff. Look how close that
Oh,
is.
wow, that is close.
wow.
Right on the line, folks. I mean, this was amazing. I was biting my nails there. I'm sorry I didn't hit the screen share. That was my bad. See, that's what happens when you delay me, Robert. It's like self-training here. Okay. I self-trained on the screen share, and look what happens. I didn't know what I
So
didn't know, and I didn't know I wasn't sharing it with y'all until after it was done one. You want me to spin it again?
I think you should do it again, and whoever wins gets a free clinic with Calamity Kite Clinic.
First
Nice.
hour is
Okay.
free.
Evidently,
Right.
Scott's paying my gas.
Well played.
Hours free.
Well played, Scott.
So,
The first
Yankee,
hour is
please reach out to me on the website, paraglidingtalk.com/contact, and fill out the form to send you something special. I will message you because I got a few options of things that I want to send your way. Yeah. Also want to mention Nebraska PPG, your gateway to the skies, elevate your adventure and expert training. Breathtaking views in Nebraska. You will literally be able to see over the corn husks. Mm-hmm.
or you might
Yeah.
fly into them.
Or you might fly right into them. Nebraska PPG is going to take you to the limits. Go sign up with some training with him. You can reach out to him through his Facebook or the links in the description. Let me just quickly mention Lone Star Paramotor. If you're in Lone Star state of Texas, you can reach out to Ron Teran. He will get you trained up. His website, lonestarparamotor.com. Okay, so I take the ground handling very serious. I'm recording in a book every day, every minute that I'm training, and no instructor is there to teach me. So I'm learning the hard way. I will say there was one video that I learned. I learned how to ground handle from. It was some guys that are in Australia. And there's a great flying place somewhere there in Australia. And now that I think about it, I kind of want to go there. But it's a site somewhere over there, and he does a great job of describing what what lines you need to be pulling to bring the glider up. He tells you what the A's, B's, C's, and D's are, talks about what happens when you pull the brakes, how to kill a glider in strong wind. And he's just got this like 15-minute video of all these little details of what you do. And so I'm watching very carefully how to hook your glider to your harness, how to reverse kite, how to properly fly down a ridge. Some kids out here driving around.
See, that's the way he was looking when he was self-training. He kept, looking for other people that were keeping an eye on him,
looking for
negative Nancying
instructors.
them.
Is that
Like, you can't do that. Can't do that here. Stop
Can't do
it.
that
You're
here.
making me nervous. I farted a little.
You need to
Makes
get
me
a
uncomfortable. Look, you can't get off the air off the ground that way.
The next step of the progression was because I had stopped ground handling in that park. I figured what I would do is I would actually go to a flying site where I know that paragliders are often flying. And it was a kind of a double win for me because I knew at that point I was going to meet other pilots. And I would argue this was a good decision that I made. of all the bad decisions, this one was a good one because now I'm getting direct feedback from people about my ground handling that are pilots that don't have a what's the term I'm looking for? They're not going to make any money off of me. They've got nothing to lose, nothing to gain from me. So they're going to tell me the truth. That's what I hope, anyways, right? Um, so as I'm ground handling, I actually show up on a day where Phil Russman is actually there and he's going to be flying. So I shake hands with him. I didn't realize that at this point my ground handling was actually really good. And in my mind, I was like, man, I still don't know what I'm doing because my self-teaching was limiting and holding me back kind of from what maybe I could have flew way sooner than I did. But anyways, I'm ground handling, bringing the wing up, turning around, running into there. Put the wing down, uh, ball it up, hike up a little bit, open the wing up, ground handle, kite, run, jump off the ground, run, jump off the ground, run, jump off the ground. Have the kids chasing me. They're running around. We're all having a blast. And so there's a little bit of wind. I'm able to control the glider a little better. Each time that I'm at this park, I'm getting better and better. It was actually Little Black. And I finally get to the place where Phil comes over and he goes, "Hey, you're doing pretty good, man. Actually, you're looking really good at ground handling." He's like, "Have you flown yet?" I'm like, "Nope. I wanted to log 30 hours by recommendation of this guy." And he goes, "What do you mean? You have a logbook?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a logbook. I've been logging every hour, every minute of ground handling." And he said, do you want to take a flight?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm down. I actually think that would be awesome." And he goes, "So we're gonna go basically like 20 feet up the side of this little hill." I'll show you I think I dialed up the video here. Here we go. Screen share. There we go. So I get now at this point I had been ground handling quite a bit. I just got off of work. I'm trying to catch the what's left of the day to be able to ground handle. This is in like April. You can see how green everything is. Right now we're getting the rain of the year. So Phil straps into my stuff, kind of check to make sure that the gear is legit. Oh, by the way, before this ever happened, I actually had another pilot fly my wing and test it out and look at it very closely. So just want to preface that before I ever took a flight, this glider was tested by a human, and he flew it up and down Torrey Pines and then gave it to me and said, "This thing's awesome." Okay, so at this point, Russman's given me some basic instructions that I pretty much already had a good handle on, but he wanted to make sure it was very clear what I was doing. He had never asked, he wasn't trying to instruct me for money. He was literally just wanting to tell me some things about what has to happen. And so we're like, you know what? Let's let's maybe I'm gonna do some more ground handling, gonna mess around a little bit more. And yeah, kids in the background. Now Phil is going to um I guess I should let this play and you guys can critique how good or bad that I was doing. Um, very difficult to kite when there's no or little wind. And so that's why I began to really fall in love with having some good wind. And even to this day, like when it's time to go and fly the paramotor, if there's no wind, I'm like, oh gosh, because it's difficult to feel without any wind. And these kids recording. So, anyways, this is
Well,
my first flight.
and that's where it can be some fun too. There's fun to be had when there's no wind or it's very, very light, because you're learning how much is enough to be able to pull that wing up without having to move backwards or forwards or to keep the wing inflated. Is it enough wind to bring the glider up and to hold it up, or is it just going to come up and then just fall back once you run out of steam? You know?
What'd you do? Pull Phil out of retirement there or what?
So he was flying that day. He had went up to the top and he had high hopes of flying XC and landed out. But he was inspired by me ground handling, I assume. So I handed the
Funny slope.
GoPro to my one of my sons, and he was not interested in having clear, concise filming. But this is the best. This is my very first flight. Now, keep in mind, I had very little airtime. So now, what I'm about to do is make a grave mistake, which is, and Phil is yelling, uh,
Turn.
stay to the left. Nope, don't turn right. Don't turn right. Because now I'm going downwind.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was fine. I pretty much stayed on my feet and did let me just rewind that for a second. I what happened was I started to aim for the rocks that are in the parking lot, and I thought to myself, I gotta fix this before I crash into these rocks. And so I basically right hand turned and stuffed it. If you keep going straight, you'll end up on the road. There's actually a street that's right there on the other side, so you can't go straight. And yeah, so you can imagine I was probably at the peak of this flight, 20 feet off the ground. So I was really stoked about getting off the ground. Um, okay, so having said all that, uh, that particular situation, I would argue, is kind of an anomaly. You're not going to always have an instructor that's not trying to get money out of your pocket, or you're not always going to have um, good situations like that. Okay. Uh, again, I do believe that mistakes were made. There were things that I could have done differently. I don't know that I would change what um, how this all came to be. I don't know that I would change it. So I don't know if somebody's asked me that question before, but I'm just going to answer it for since I brought it up. I still would have taken the path that I took. And let me tell you a few reasons why. And again, I said I would never have this show because it's incredibly controversial. But let me say this, there is a certain amount of fear, that a healthy fear that you should have for this sport. And I have to wonder how much of that fear gets seared or nulled or dulled, if you will, with the idea that because you did some kind of training and you get some kind of a license, that all of a sudden now you're safer. You're inherently better and safer. Um, I feel like everyone needs to be incredibly diligent. I don't know how it can be so dry in here with it's like raining outside. My my throat keeps on going dry. So anyways, the idea that you're going to self-train and everything's going to be okay, some people get away with it, some people don't. But in my case, I was very, very diligent with every step. You could argue also that I didn't take my first flight alone, so I didn't self-teach because I had an instructor showing me how to launch, right? Here's another aspect of the self-teaching that is a little bit dangerous. If you are um, if you are learning from a friend, uh, you may be pushed into flying in situations that you're not ready for. This happened a couple times where I made friends with kind of the bad kids, if you will, that were perfectly fine with flying with somebody that doesn't have a rating, and I didn't have a rating yet. Um, they were wanting to fly on days that were spicy, and they were wanting to launch at hours that were made for cross country. and not a new pilot. And so there was several times that I showed up and I was the very last guy to launch, and I'm waiting and watching other pilots, very diligent with every step and every sight, watching and patiently waiting for a time to launch and listening carefully to other people. Um, Another aspect of the self-training is not really knowing who you should listen to. You have to be very careful because there are people that will impose their overwhelming fear onto you, which is probably the safer bet. But I've never been one to live that safer life. It's always been there's always been some extreme aspect of whatever sport that I'm involved in. There's always some kind of next level. But you don't achieve greatness by playing it safe all the time. You're going to have to take risks every once in a while. So, um, what was the other thing? I didn't write this down, but it was something else I wanted to mention about. Yeah, showing up to the hill and being respectful. Um, you will win friends with humility in this sport. If you are coming to the site and you're very aggressive about learning because somebody offended you or somebody told you something that, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. That wing might be a little bit too small for you, or that wing might be a little too big for you. Do you have a reserve? How old is that reserve? Has that thing been repacked? These questions, your fellow pilots are going to ask you questions. Don't get offended because somebody asks you these questions. Know that they're asking you with good intention, and that may come off as aggressive, or it may come off as you're prying into my personal business and this is America. Look, I've been there. I know what that is to be um, prideful. But I would argue that the best possible thing that you can do if you're going to go down this road is to be humble the entire way and acknowledge that you don't know and you need to learn. If you go through your progression saying, "Oh, I already know that, and I know that, and I know that, and I know that, and I know that," and there was a certain aspect of me that I did probably say that a couple times, but for the most part, I'm taking any information that I can get from people, and I'm being very humble to receive it and thankful and grateful, and just being kind. Man, I'm telling you, it is such a great community. The paragliding community is incredible. There's just a couple little dingle dwarfs that are out there that are going to mess it up, but for the most part, everybody is super cool. And when you say that you're a pilot and you shake hands with somebody after a flight, and you shared a thermal with somebody, or you did a cross country with somebody that you'd never flown with before, it's awesome. It's like a brotherhood. Speaking of brotherhood, I want to mention this. Everybody knows about Sister Millie. Millie she is an instructor. You go to episode 200, and we interviewed her on episode 200. She recently got diagnosed with a aggressive form of cancer, and it's kind of with a heavy heart. She had I believe that she went through with the double mastectomy, and it's still um, in her body. It's still doing damage, and she needs our prayers. And if I can just encourage you, and I want to just I know this show has always been controversial, but let me just I want to just take this opportunity and this platform to use it for a positive thing. And I want to encourage you in your daily prayers, pray for her. And I actually want to just real quickly pray. Maybe people don't know how to pray or what to pray. I want to just take a second to just pray for her real quick and ask you, and if you'll do the same. There's power in numbers. And I want to just real quickly pray for her. Father, we thank you for your mercy, your grace. God, we pray for our sister Millie, that you would move in the supernatural realm and heal her. We know that you've done miracles. We know that Jesus did miracles, and you said that your disciples could do miracles too, and even in proxy. God, we ask you that you would help Sister Millie. I pray that you would cause her to win this battle against this infirmity and this sickness and cancer. And I plead the blood of Jesus on her. And I ask you, God, that you would move, go again where we cannot go. And I pray, God, that you would just move in the miraculous, God, and let her testify of her healing. And we thank you for what you're going to do in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. She's such a sweetheart, and just a good spirit, very lighthearted, and she's a local, and she deserves the best. And so if you can remember, pray for her, and just keep her in mind when you're thinking good thoughts and things like that. So want to mention real quick the last couple of sponsors. Max Marin, he runs a SIV clinic here in Southern California, but he's also now training. So if you want to get instruction, man, if I would have been able to get training under him, which I was on radio with him for a weekend doing SIV, was awesome. I couldn't imagine how cool it would be have him as your instructor. So he's got a school here. You can reach out to him through maxacro.com. That's his website. He's world record holder, incredible pilot's been doing it since he was a little kid and never lost the passion. Is just as passionate as he was from the first day. Sign up with him and his team at maxacro.com. Also want to mention Resurgence PBG. It's about that tax time, and you're looking for maybe your business is looking for a tax deductible donation. This is the place where you can do it, and you can support our men and women of uniform. It's a great organization, great people. You talk to some of the alumni, they are some of the happiest people on the planet because of this organization. Resurgence PBG has probably sponsored maybe 15 or 20 now.
Todd Scandrick, yeah.
And what an awesome thing that they're doing. Guys, they end up coming back from the battlefield, jacked up, PTSD, can't sleep right, depressed, suicidal, and maybe don't have vision. Yep. Adaptive recovery.
Amputees. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Well, paragliding and mostly paramotoring just gives them something to do and gives them a vision for life again. And you talk to every single one of those guys, and they're absolutely grateful. And so do that, support Resurgence PPG if you can. Yep. Lots of people in the chat. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. I really appreciate you hanging out with us. And if you have any questions you want to ask, we got like 5 more minutes. If there's any questions that you wanted to ask about things that we talked about, and I want to just I said I was going to mention the pre-qualifications.
Yeah.
Let me read some of the pre-qualifications for the P3. So intermediate paragliding rating P3, general description. The pilot has the knowledge and skills to fly most sites in mild to moderate soaring conditions, and to judge when the site and the conditions are within the pilot's skill, knowledge, and experience level. The pilot understands the USHPA paragliding rating system and recommended operating limitations, and the FARs and other flying rules applicable to his or her flying, ridge rules, thermal right-of-way, FAR 103, aircraft sectional use, and regulated airspace avoidance, etc. The pilot shall use good judgment and have a level of maturity commensurate with the rating. Intermediate rating requires witness tasks, and these are the tasks that are important. One is the logged requirements. Must have logged a minimum of 30 flying days. Must have logged a total of at least 90 flights. This involves a launch and a landing. Must have logged a minimum of 20 hours of solo airtime. Must demonstrate skills and knowledge. Under this, it has received training in and or understands the importance and significance of right-of-way rules, And then the next section is the FAA regulations and aircraft sectional charts. So you need to understand airspeed control, stall spins, turbulence-induced collapses, and recoveries. You're going to find some of the details in the canopy owner's manual. So your wing comes with a manual. The USHPA accident report results currently in print. So you should be able, have read that. You can give a verbal analysis of conditions on the hill, demonstrating knowledge of wind shadows, gradients, lift, sink, laminar air, turbulence, and rotors, and the effects that these items will have on the intended flight path and turns. You must be able to give a verbal flight plan for each observed flight. You must show thorough pre-flight of the harness, canopy, and backup reserve parachute. With each flight, you must demonstrate a method of establishing that the pilot is properly connected to the glider with cleared lines and risers just prior to launch. All inflations and launches should be aggressive, confident, and with smooth transition from running to flying. Flights with slow, unstable inflations launches will not be considered adequate for witnessed tasks. For witnessed tasks, all landings must be safe, smooth, on the feet, and in control. Demonstrates the ability to differentiate airspeed from ground speed. And that's a test question. Demonstrates linked 180 turns along with predetermined ground tracking, showing smooth control, reversals, and proper coordination at the various speeds and bank angles. Demonstrates 360 turns in both directions and at various speeds and bank angles. Demonstrates symmetrical and asymmetrical tip folds, 25% per side, 50 total, or some other method of canopy reduction for the increased descent rate. You can do big ears for this. Demonstrates one method to increase forward speed. Demonstrates proper surge control of canopy using proper timed brake application. Gives a thorough verbal description of how to maintain directional control during and can correct for a 50% asymmetric wing collapse. Gives a thorough explanation of why flying a paraglider will or with one or both toggles significantly extended should be avoided unless flaring for landing. The signs that the paraglider has entered a stall configuration or one or both sides in an 8 to 15 mile per hour winds demonstrates the ability to maintain airspeed at or near minimum sink during crosswind and upwind legs without any evidence of stalls. Demonstrates 5 landings within the 10-foot target after flights requiring turns on approach. That's a big one right there. So can you land on a 10-foot round circle? That's a question. Demonstrates proper airspeed control on landing approach when descending through a gradient. Demonstrates proper airspeed for maximum distance when flown into significant headwind. And there's just a couple more. Let me just stay with me for a minute longer. Demonstrates complete understanding of all paragliding tow discussion topics for tow-related pilots only. Must pass the USHPA intermediate paragliding written exam. Must agree to the provisions of the USHPA standard. That's all kind of boring stuff. Max base wind 15, max peak gust 18. These are the operating limitations for an intermediate pilot. Max base wind of 15, max peak gust to 18, maximum gust rate of 5 miles per hour in 5 seconds. Avoid steep turns close to the ground. Avoid application of either brake beyond 3/4 of the way from full to stall position. Limit turn bank angles recommended by the manufacturer. Limit speed to turns to 2 times the straighter line. Brakes off cruise speed and smoothly exit any spiral turn that shows a tendency to steepen or accelerate. This is when you're doing some you're wanting to lose altitude quickly. Should initiate downwind turns only within 300 foot of clearance outward from the hill or ridge in winds above 15 miles an hour and or 200 clearance winds above 10 miles an hour. Should not fly in thermals where the peak rates climb to 500 excessive. Upon mastering the above skills, the intermediate pilot should pursue new maneuvers, sites, and conditions with the guidance of a USPA certified advanced paraglider instructor observer. Lot to unpack there. I apologize for dumping that right at the very end of the program. We will go into the after show. Maybe we'll do a part 2 of this episode. So thanks for watching.
Paraglidingtalk.com.
Yep. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. If I don't see you on there, I'll see you in there. Have a great night. Make sure that if you haven't done so, support the show on Patreon and PayPal. And hopefully we'll see you at the Flying Circus next week. We may or may not live stream from there. We'll see. Paragliding.